Okay, I'm going to finish this off. So, I had just done a video on the Constitution and natural law. So I know that not everybody wants to hear about Christianity, but this has kind of been bugging me a little bit. And so, the discussion that I had with somebody earlier today, and I just got into natural law and how Roe v. Wade didn't need to be overturned with another case and yada yada. But I wanted to kind of get into this Christianity stuff because it's super interesting to me. So, as I talked about with abortion, as it comes to legal rights, it's not a right if it involves a third party. Okay, so a legal right under the Constitution means something that you have the right to physically do, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others, which abortion does infringe on the unborn, which is another, that's controversial, I understand, but it's not in the Constitution, so the federal government doesn't have a right to govern that if it's not listed in the Constitution. But what I wanted to get into a little bit more was the spiritual aspect of it, because this particular person, he has a Christianity belief, that's what he has said before, and he made some comments, and he says that, again, the conservatives are trying to force this, they're trying to force a woman to have a baby, and he also got into the whole thing about it doesn't matter what I believe, has nothing to do with law, and that he is both pro-choice and pro-life. We got into this big debate, and so he was saying that was just defiles religion altogether, is to have people forced to do anything. So a couple of things, and I'm sure he wasn't getting what I was trying to say, but as far as being forced, natural law is something that nobody is forced to do. Okay, it is a physical ability. And so again, I keep trying to encourage people to go back to natural law and the Constitution because it's not recognized. It's not recognized in our courts. It's not recognized in law school. They don't teach it in regular schools. And natural law is what we need to go back to. So that was, something I talked more about in the first video. But as far as being a Christian, he made some comments and he said, there's never a time when sin, the prophets are told to abolish sin. And I looked that up. I mean, if you go look up sin, it's like there's so much, they're constantly told not, the people not to sin, right? And I think what he's trying to say, honestly, is that people have a right to choose, and they do. They absolutely do. By natural law, they have a right to choose because God is nature and nature's law. And also, as far as being a Christian, we are absolutely given the right to choose. But there's a couple things in here I'm going to bring up. This is based off of his belief, D&C, and he'll know what that is. Let's see, 5.7, and let me make sure I'm doing this right. I thought this was interesting. It outlines, it says, and the law of the land, which is constitutional, supporting that principle of freedom, is maintaining rights and privileges belonging to all mankind and is justifiable before me. So even by the religion that I believe that he has, the founder of that religion, I won't go into it, is actually sustaining the Constitution, and that the laws that he is justifiable, is what he's saying here. Therefore, I, the Lord, justify you and your brethren of my church in befriending the law, which is constitutional law of the land. And as pertaining to law of man, whatsoever is more or less than this committeth of evil. Okay, because he said to me, where are we supposed to abolish evil? It actually talks about this. I, the Lord, made you free, therefore you are free indeed, and the law also make you free. Nevertheless, when the wicked rule, the people mourn. Wherefore, honest men and wise men should be sought for diligence, and good men and women and wise men ye shall observe, uphold, otherwise whosoever is less than these cometh of evil. And I gave you a commandment that ye shall forsake all evil and cleave unto all good, that ye shall live by every word which proceeded forth of the mouth of God. For you will give unto the faithful line upon line, precept upon precept. It talks about that we are to forsake evil when it comes to our laws. Okay, another one that most people will relate to more is Romans 13. I mean, this whole chapter is awesome. The very first one, I've heard people say, oh, we're supposed to follow the laws of the land if you're Christian. They're getting this from Romans 13:1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. And that's what they go off of. read the rest of the scripture. For there is no power but of God. The powers that are ordained of God. We are to follow God's laws, not man's laws. Now, it goes throughout the chapter and it says, if they be righteous, we follow our leaders if they be righteous. If they tell us to do righteous things, then we follow them. If they don't, we fight against it. That's what God expects from us. Let's see. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt praise of the same. Let's see. We go down here a little bit further. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministered, attending continually upon the very thing. Tribute is like a God. Our leaders have become a form of idolatry. People only do what the law says, and they're not paying attention to what is God's law and what is man's law. Anyway, this whole chapter is awesome. Let's see. Render therefore to all thy dues, tributes, and to whom tribute is due. Custom to whom's custom. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor. Oh, no man anything but to love one another. So read through this whole thing because, like I said, this gives provisions. Nobody reads the provisions. We are to follow God's law. So when it comes down to like abortion and homosexuality, I see this huge fight, and I've seen people say, oh, well, you're a Christian, you're supposed to love everybody. Yeah, you are. You're supposed to allow everybody to be able to make their own choices. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. We are to be, and I've said this over and over in my responses, we are to be loving to people, but we are to fight against the policies that offend God. I didn't say abortion is horrible or it should be illegal or it should be a sin. God did. Same with homosexuality or any sexual indiscretion for that matter. God did. It's all through the scriptures. So I had pointed this out about the days of Noah, that the people were not, they weren't fighting. I mean, people were idolatry and bestiality. They were sacrificing children, they were doing all these things, but there were still people that were worshiping God. But God deemed them all evil because they wouldn't fight against those policies. They said, look, you go do what you want, we'll go do what we want, and we'll all live happily ever after. And God's like, no, you are to fight for my word. You are to fight for my law. My law is the only law. And he said, well, where does it say that? Well, I'm going off of scholars, and they go really deep. There was, I'm not sure if there still is, on Amazon Prime, there's a movie that's called The Days of Noah, and it explains all this. And it's really awesome. The same thing happened with the sacrifices of Baal. And, you know, where Malak, I don't know if you guys have heard that. That's where they were sacrificing children. God wipes out any society, Sodom and Gomorrah. He wipes them out if they refuse to fight against the policies that he has told us that these are his laws, these are his commandments. We fight against anything that offends him. This is not me. I'm not making up these stories. That's just how it is. So you can't say, oh, well, we should just let people do what they want. Well, yeah, they're going to. They have to. But if we're not fighting against it, we're deemed evil as well. So when people say it's none of your business. You don't have a right to say what other people do. It doesn't matter. You know, we follow the law. No, I don't follow the law. I follow God's law. And if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be following God's law. There are things in our laws that I can tell that God says, okay, this is okay. We're helping the poor. We're doing this. We're doing that. So that's something that you follow. If it's going against him, I can't control everything on one person, but I'm going to fight against it by my voting and by my voice and by my constantly trying to bring my brothers and sisters in and calling them out and saying, are you paying attention to this? Okay, this is not my opinion. He kept saying, this is your opinion or whatever. The laws aren't based off your opinion. No, they're not based off of anybody's opinion if you're a Christian. They're based off of God's law. So that's something that you need to pay attention to. I don't make this stuff up. And I do believe that if we're fighting against it, we can't control everything. God sees what we do. He sees the intent of our heart. So when you say, oh, I'm fighting for other people's choice, where in scripture does it tell you that you can fight against something that God's already deemed as sin? You don't fight for the right for somebody else to commit a sin. We are our brother's keeper. We are supposed to be diligent and sober-minded in the last days and understand what secret combinations are. And this defiles all that. So something to think about if you're a Christian.